Good evening. The Neighborhoods Committee welcomes you to this program tonight. These programs come to us in interesting ways. I always like to describe that to you because there's a committee that meets and talks and does work and plans, and you don't see all of those people here. But we have done a series of programs here on low-income affordable housing. And then at those, people asked, well, there's a group of people from Horizon House who are going to build tiny houses. We have lots of questions about tiny houses. So fortunately, people here at Horizon House know something about the tiny house work and invited the two leaders of that work to come and share with us this evening. So these are people that work hard all day and then come this evening to share about this with us. And as I told some of you earlier that were here, they want to start the program by asking, what questions do you have? But before I get to that, then Adele Reynolds, who's been the person who really did the work of organizing this program, is going to introduce the speakers. And I want to tell you a little bit later, Terry Gudger, who's one of the people that organizes people from Horizon House to go down and do the work, is going to tell us a little bit about that too. So I think it's going to be quite an interesting program again tonight. Thank you.
It wasn't long ago when I heard that Terry Gudger was organizing people to go down and help build tiny houses. Well, it didn't take long. And how many of you who are in this room now have been down to help build tiny houses? Okay, and that's just once a month, but it's a lot of fun. And enjoy some of these pictures because they have a big open space. And yes, like these pictures you see, they're actually building from scratch. And yes, it's fun, but it is tiring. We've had some people who were ready to go home at noon, and they had to wait around until their ride was ready to go home. Yes, that actually happened. Well, Barb,
I wanted you to give their names.
okay, that's what I was looking around for, my prompt cue here. Barbara Oliver is the one who is in charge of getting things going and procuring this huge space with no heat. And and I've not been on the crew in the summertime, but I certainly do have layers. And Sharon Lee then takes over after the houses are built and puts them into a community. Somehow she knows how to do that. She's had quite a bit of practice. But the first person will be Barb Oliver, and she'll start at the very beginning. So, Barb, here you are. Just push it up. No.
Okay, we'll use the one that works. Okay. So I'm Barb Oliver, AKA Barb the Builder. That's what been called before. I see a lot of familiar faces here, and that's wonderful. If you think of the phrase tiny home village, we are the tiny home part. We are Sound Foundations Northwest, and I'm director of operations for that. Lehigh, the Low Income Housing Institute, is the village part, or what we like to call the village people. Ready, YMCA. Nobody's doing it. Oh, wrong crowd. Sorry. Thanks, Andrew. Thanks for. So what we thought we would do, Sharon and I would do, is to open it up for people, if you not necessarily questions, but topics that you want us to talk on. Because we don't want to go on and on and on and bore you about stuff that you don't want to know. So if you have, who's our microphone? Are you being Phil Donahue? Okay, there we go. Y'all remember Phil Donahue, right? Yeah, okay. Right crowd, okay. Anybody have a topic that they want to talk about? Right here, we'll start right here. Use the microphone, please.
I'm curious because these houses are very, very tiny, smaller than other tiny houses
Yes.
that I've seen, and they don't appear to have bathrooms and kitchens. Is that correct? And how is that?
Okay, so we'll talk about the infrastructure. Good, okay.
And how did all of this start?
Sharon's your gal. She'll tell you all about that. It was a dark and stormy night. No, wrong story. Sorry. It's been a long day. We're trying to lighten up the mood here a little bit. Okay, go ahead.
Who gets to live there? How are they selected? Do they pay anything? How long do they stay there?
Okay.
Can they bring their dogs? And,
Okay.
and
Good, we'll
little
talk about
pets.
all that. Good.
Hi. How do you find land to place the tiny villages?
The land always comes up. We will talk
Where
about
does
land.
that come from?
Yes. Go
How
ahead.
long is the waiting list to get in for young families or mothers and children?
Okay.
And how many small, tiny homes do we have in the city of Seattle, approximately?
504, but who's counting? Yes.
Since the topic was already brought up, I'd like to know the starting time and the closing time
For tonight?
to work on the houses.
How long does it take to build a home, is what
No,
you're
no, no, no. Not how long it takes to build a home. When do we start if we are a volunteer to build a home?
Oh, honey,
When
we'll get
do-
you going right away. That's not a problem.
No, what's the work day like for that?
What's the
What
work
time
day?
do you start? We normally, we build from 9 a.m. to about 2:30, 3 o'clock. But if your schedule does not allow that, or you need to sleep in, that's okay. We take people from whenever you can to whenever you can. So if you happen to get tired by noon and you want to go home, that's okay.
When do you start?
9 a.m.,
And when do we
9
leave here?
8:30.
Do you have anything that starts later?
Talk to Terry. I can't control that. Yeah, okay. Don't
Other
say what you're
questions?
thinking. Okay,
So,
Oh.
you see the range of things that you've talked about. are
Okay.
the-
good. Okay. So
Show them how the houses are built, she said.
I'll start with the tiny home part of it. Sharon and I have different languages. She refers them as tiny houses. We refer them to tiny homes. It's basically the same thing. It's just a difference in philosophy. Not a big deal. So our homes are this shot right here. That's Fire Chief Scoggins. Last year in the Seattle One Day of Service, it was all firefighters. Women, we took pictures for the calendar, okay? So, no, just kidding. This is our 9th Eagle Scout project. This coming weekend will be our 11th Eagle Scout project, and then one again, number 12, will be happening in June. Okay, so tiny homes are 8 feet by 12 feet. It's about the size of an average bedroom. You're going to see the insides of the tiny homes throughout the photos here. It's basically in random order. We were awarded the Leader in Affordable Green Housing from King County because nothing that we do goes in the landfill. It's all recycled. And we're very adamant about that, very green that way. It takes 176 volunteer hours, or roughly 8 days, to go through the cycle from being from a pile of wood to out the door. Once the homes go out the door, we technically donate them to Lehigh, the Low Income Housing Institute, and then they become Lehigh's responsibility to put them in the villages. To date, tomorrow we are building home number 466, I think. And that's about $1.9 million worth of tiny homes. And so we're in 19 villages, right, Sharon, at this point? 504 tiny homes in the city of Seattle, and about 700 in some odd in Lehigh does villages from as far south as Olympia to as far north as Bellingham, mostly in King and Pierce County. And there's about 756, I'm thinking, somewhere in there, tiny homes. In the city of Seattle, they just did the point in time count, so we don't have the actual data, but it's somewhere around 7,100 people on the streets for 500 homes. So if you get a tiny home, you basically won the lottery. But we have a plan to get everybody off the streets in 3 years or less. It's on our website. I've got our address on a business card. If you want a business card afterwards, come find me and I will hand that out so you'll have all that information. It's very exciting stuff. Homelessness is solvable. And you gotta believe that. Every single city that I've talked to has always said, if you believe homelessness is solvable, we can get everybody off the streets. Okay, Sharon, you want to come up and address some of the stuff then? You want to be the dog or the pony in the show? Check, check. Can we get another mic that works up here?
For sure.
Take that one right there.
Oh, great. Good evening. I'm Sharon Lee. I'm the Executive Director of the Low Income Housing Institute, or Lehigh for short. And it's great to see everybody. So we are primarily a nonprofit housing organization. And so we own and manage 3,500 units of apartments, rental apartments. And we've also done some home ownership. So we have housing for families with children, housing for people who are homeless, housing for homeless young adults, veterans, seniors, the whole spectrum. And we also have housing for low-wage workers, people making minimum wage to double minimum wage. So I have a staff of 400 people managing housing, operating housing, and developing housing. And what we found out, even though housing is our mission, we found out that the homeless population has grown so much that we can't keep up with the housing production because it takes too long. It takes so much time to find a piece of property, to then finance it, get it permitted and under construction, and it could take 5 years to do one building. And of course, we do a lot of permanent supportive housing, which is housing for typically chronically homeless people suffering from mental illness, chemical dependency, drug issues, and there's wraparound services. So we decided that we were going to start a new line of business. The new line of business would be tiny houses, because that would be the quickest way to get people off the streets, out of tents, out of cars, out of RVs, into a safe, warm place. And then we would have case managers. Every village has 1 or 2 tiny houses that have been converted into offices for social workers and case managers. And then in some villages, we also have behavioral health, mental health, behavioral health specialists. So the whole idea is to make sure that we can have homeless individuals into a tiny house as quickly as possible, make sure that there's case management and that they have a successful transition to permanent housing. Now, permanent housing can include subsidized housing. It could include permanent supportive housing. It could also include market rate housing in some cases, and also reunite people with family or friends. So it's not just, it has to be housing, but it could also be a pathway so that if they have family or friends out of town and where they land, they're not going to be homeless, then that's also a permanent solution. So I wanted to say that my board of directors was really supportive. Initially, we had known about tent cities. We were very concerned about the fact that, some tent cities were squatting on, private property. They were being threatened by the police. And so we decided we had a vacant piece of land that we were going to build senior housing. And we said, okay, we're going to allow a tent city on our property because they were being chased from another site and they were under threat of being arrested. And then we found out that the tent city we partnered with, which is Nicholsville, we found out that it was just a tragic situation, even though it was a safe place, a safe tent city. We still had families with children living in these tents. We had I couldn't believe it, we had a mother with a broken leg with her child, and her partner had beaten her up. So she was a domestic violence victim living in a tent. Can you believe this? So we hosted a tent city on 20th and South Jackson, and it became apparent that the tents were not weatherproof. You can't just throw a bunch of tarps on top of a tent and expect it to stay dry, right? You can't stand up. You can't really dress and go to work. I mean, it's just a dire situation with the rain and it's just a horrible situation. So we worked with the first real tiny house we built was with Home Depot. We had volunteers from Home Depot who decided to work with us to develop a tiny house for homeless vets. And so we had one day, everybody came together, built a tiny house, and then they built another one. And then everybody else in the village said, well, that's, how about the rest of us, right? Why is there only 2 for homeless vets? So anyway, I served on the mayor's task force on unsheltered homelessness. And we said, look, this is ridiculous. If we could build tiny houses quickly, right, then we wouldn't have people living in these horrible wet tents. And so I don't know if people remember the building department, Diane Sugamora, she headed up the city's building department. I went to her and said, what can we do? I mean, you have so many unsheltered homeless people. We can't continue the way we are. And by the way, just so people know, it's very expensive to build a shelter. If you're gonna do a bricks and mortar shelter, it's gonna take you as long as building an apartment building, right? So building shelters all over the place was also not a financial option. So the head of the building department said to me, well, Sharon, if you build them under 120 square feet, we won't count them as dwelling units because the International Building Code, which is the city's code, says a dwelling unit has to be 120 square feet or larger. So we said, okay, can we build them under 120 square feet? And she said, yes. So all of our tiny houses are under 120 square feet. By building them under 120 square feet, we don't have to meet the energy code, the seismic code, the building code, and we can build them quickly. And Barb and the Hope Factory can build them quickly. Now, the first few tiny houses were not necessarily very well insulated, and they did not have heat, right? But now they've evolved to the place where they're insulated, they have heat, they're high quality, they're furnished. We have, donors and churches and, volunteers who furnish them. And there's a smoke detector, carbon monoxide detector, and because of climate change, we now, not only do we have heat, but we have air conditioning, right? And it's this, if you recall the old days of family camp. The whole idea is that the family would stay in their little lean-to, right? And then there'll be a communal shower, communal kitchen. So this is what happens. In the old days, the city said to us, okay, we'll give you a budget. But the budget was hardly anything. The budget was like, like put in some porta potties, right? Like put in some tents that look like, for kitchens, right? And we said, no, that is not dignified. That is not humane. So our tiny houses now have laundry, showers, private bathrooms. So you're not like showering in front of anybody. You're showering in once you enter one of our bathrooms, you will see that it's like a family, in your house. It's got the shower, toilet, sink, right? And the kitchens have freezers, refrigerators, cooktops, running water, dining. And so we have these wonderful tiny house villages. We have one in every council district or more. So you should come, and if you want to visit, the closest one I think to here would be True Hope Village. True Hope Village is right by Langston Hughes, and it has families with children, singles and couples, and it's sponsored by 2 churches, Reverend Jeffrey with the New Hope Baptist Church, and Reverend Willis with the True Vine of Holiness Baptist Church. And we have church sponsors in many of our tiny house villages, and we are on church property. We're on Metro. We have we're on a Metro site. We're on a Port of Seattle, City of Seattle, City of Tacoma, City of Bellingham site, right? And some private sites. So we have lots of opportunity for land because sometimes developers have purchased land and they plan on building something and it hasn't happened. It's a good opportunity for us to ask them if we can use their land. And also there's a lot of public land. There is a state law that says that if you own property and you use it for transitional housing or homeless housing, you can actually get a property tax break. So we've saved one owner like $60,000 a year by having our village on his property. I know there were a whole bunch of questions. What's great about tiny houses is that you can bring your partner, you can bring your pets, and you can bring your belongings and feel secure that they're, unlike a shelter where let's say if you're staying in a shelter and you're sleeping next to other people, you may not feel safe about, like when you're sleeping, are people going to steal your stuff? If someone has a cold next to you, are you going to catch it? I mean, there are lots of issues about what's considered congregate shelter. So tiny houses were terrific during COVID because you had like 2 doors and 2 walls between you and the other person. And you had fresh air everywhere, so hardly anybody living in a tiny house village caught COVID. Now, I think you had another question about how long do people stay, right? So we make it a point of saying if you move into a tiny house village, there are a set of there's a code of conduct, and also we want you to meet with your case manager. Because the whole idea is to get you out of your crisis, homelessness crisis, into a place, have you heal, essentially. We have people who come into a tiny house village who are basically malnutritioned, and their health is so bad, their hygiene is terrible, they're on the brink of whatever, total depression. Suicide. But once they're in a tiny house and there's a supportive environment, their whole being transforms, and they are on the pathway to getting their IDs together, including in some cases finding a job, going to school, The families, our families with kids are getting help with childcare. They're getting help with educational resources. And so we are seeing like that the tiny house village is cost effective and it works. It's a proven model. So last year, over 1,300 men, women, children were helped by living in a tiny house.
And more to come. Okay, how about we open it up to questions here, Sharon? Okay, there's a question over here. She's coming with the microphone.
A family with a couple kids. I can't imagine them living in an 8 by 10. What?
8 by 12.
8 by 12.
So what we've had a family of 4 living in a tiny house, and what happens is that there is a basically a platform bed for the parents, and then pull out mats at night for the 2 children. Now we have as a family of 7. So what we do is we give them 2 tiny houses. So the mother is with the kids in one tiny house, and the father is with the other kids in the other tiny house. So we have adapted this for families with children. And then we've also put in bunk beds as well. So.
And there is a photo of the insides of some tiny homes and one with bunk beds in here too, so. Yes, sir.
Yes, I used to be a carpenter years ago. I didn't go into it, but nonetheless, I have all kinds of carpentry skills. Is there a place for me?
Yeah, we won't hold that against you. It's okay. So, at the Hope Factory, when we build, 7 out of every 10 people that build with us have absolutely no carpentry skills whatsoever, okay? So we operate at a 5th grade level. So we say, if you're smarter than a 5th grader, you can come and do stuff. Now, we do have people with skills, and that's great, and we put you on different things. Everybody to their own ability. Me being the ardent feminist that I am, we do not have traditional men's jobs and women's jobs. I grew up with a father that said, you can't touch a tool because you're a female. Well, you know what payback is, right? This is what I do every day. But our volunteers range in age from 16 to 96.
Wow.
Okay? And the woman with the sari on in here that you'll see she's the 96er. Everybody calls her auntie. So she works for about an hour, and then she sits down, and then she's part of a church group, and everybody dotes on her and everything, and then she points at everybody and just bosses them around. And that's okay. Okay? We have different age ranges. We're up for actually an intergenerational grant. I don't know if you know that or not. From a nationwide organization because of what we do. We have Christians and Muslims and Buddhists. We had our first vegan group yesterday. That's great. All different sorts of groups. Everything from, we have the Warehousers and the Boeings and all of those folks. REI's coming next month. That's new. And then we have a group from Mercer Island called Soulmates, S-O-L-E. These are a bunch of 70-something-year-old women that walk around Mercer Island. Soul, get a walking? Snicker? Okay, that's cool. If the Soulmates can do it, anybody in this room can do it. So you're more than welcome to come and join us. Grab a card afterwards, and we'll show you how to volunteer.
Okay.
For anybody. We build every day but Friday, 6 days a week.
I want to just add to that. We have a wonderful 3-minute video. I wish I could just give it to you. And it's 2 middle school girls building a tiny house in their front yard. And it's just fantastic. So we have instructions. If you want to, we have church groups that build it in the church parking lot. But we have the instructions, every piece of lumber you need, the instructions, and people who can also, if you don't want to build in a factory, you can also build it, at home, frankly, and we'll pick it up, right? And it actually works. We have people who like do it as like a family project, and actually we have people who pull together their family for like an event. Like we wanna get to know each other better and work on something positive, and so it's been a great experience because people are so.
I'm going to interrupt you a
People
second.
are
Here's
so-
the insides of the homes here.
Yeah.
So-
Oh, great. People are so frustrated that people want to do something to help end homelessness, right? And this is something people can actually do, right? And if you don't feel like building a tiny house, you can paint it, or you can caulk it, or you can help put the gardening, the garden plots together. You can help, beautify it. We have many of our villages are handicap accessible. We have people in wheelchairs, walkers, people with mobility issues. So the hygiene facilities and the tiny houses and the case manager's office are often handicap accessible.
And I want to give a plug for Lehigh too. Lehigh also has a separate volunteer organization where they do volunteer work actually in the villages, painting fences and all sorts of stuff in there too. So there's lots of good volunteer opportunities, both at the Hope Factory building on your own, or working in the villages themselves. Okay, here's a question right here. Pass it down. Okay, you're first.
Okay.
Sure, men first, and then we're going to get to you next, okay?
Mine's more a comment. I worked the last time we went, and I was impressed with how you have it set up. Workstations, everything is a jig, and it's pieced together. You don't have to measure you don't have to measure twice and cut once because it's already pre-cut. You put it together. It's like
Smarter than a fifth grader.
yeah. It's like Tinker Toys or Lego blocks.
Right, here's a question.
Could you explain a little bit about the auxiliary buildings, the kitchen, and the community setup?
So we feel it's really important that all the services people need are on site. And that is why we've been making sure. So for instance, like if you're homeless, where are you going to do your laundry, right? Like, it's a serious problem. And where are you going to take a shower? So we did not want to exclude laundry from being on site, because then people will be wandering around the whole neighborhood trying to find out how they're going to, how are they going to take care of some basic needs. So we make sure there's laundry on site. The same with, the city initially thought, oh, just porta potties, and they can go to some public place and go to get a shower or something. We said no, we need to have showers on site. So. The kitchens are all plumbed. So we actually, we have the city bring a power pole in for electricity, and then we plumb into, and then we get water, and then we get sewer access, right? And so if you go to our kitchens, right now we've been using cargo containers that have been renovated, right? And so it's got all the stuff you need for refrigerators, freezers, the cooktops, and running hot water. So we make it as much as possible without having to build a total structure. So right now, if anything needs permitting, it's the plumbing. Like we'll get the plumber, we'll get the over-the-counter permit. The electrician will get the permits, but we don't have to permit the whole building. The same thing with the, the idea of the tiny houses, right? We're not meeting the building code.
And we do what we call a QC, or quality control, every step of the process. So the person tomorrow is looking at yesterday's build and making sure everything's right and square and plumb and all that fun stuff too. One thing Sharon forgot in the villages, and this is important, is they build planter boxes. So people can have mini gardens or raise flowers or like live a normal human life, right? Cool. There's a question back here. Okay, go ahead, and then you'll be next. You'll be next, okay.
What are the responsibilities of the people who move in, or are they? You have a code of ethics, so to speak, of responsibilities and what are the consequences?
Yeah. So essentially, there's a code of conduct that people have to sign and agree to, and that's your typical list, right? No stealing, no criminal activity, clean up after yourself, things like that. So, and meet with your case manager, be courteous. So we have that list, and what we do is. People have to supervise their children. People have to supervise, I don't know, you don't say supervise your pets, right? You keep them on a leash. You don't supervise your pets. And that seems to work pretty well because we also need the cooperation. I'll be honest, we need the cooperation of the police department because sometimes we have, we may have a drug issue, we may have violence, and we have to make sure that the community is safe. So we actually have awake staff 24/7 in our villages, and we have security cameras, and we have a secure fence around the village, and so that we can check who's coming in and make sure that unwanted guests are not coming in. So it is very, we want people to feel safe, that this is a safe place for them to live. Now, I failed to mention that if in the traditional shelter system, which is why people have problems going to a traditional shelter system, is that oftentimes the women are put in one place, the men are put in another place. In some cases, you can't bring your pets. In some cases, shelters do not allow teenage sons, right? And, so there are a lot of barriers to keeping, let's say, a family together or, keeping your, you want to stay with your partner.
Okay, the next slide here is our oldest volunteer. This is Auntie right here. If she can do it, anybody can. Okay, there's a question back here, and then we'll get to you. We'll get to you right now, okay. Go ahead.
Oh,
you have the microphone,
yeah,
go ahead.
How are people selected to move into these homes?
Good question.
Yeah, what's the selection process?
Okay, so depending on who's funding us, so for instance, the city of Tacoma has an outreach team called the HEAL team. And they go around town and they find vulnerable people who are living outdoors, and then they refer them to our village. Because they're funding the village, they're providing some of the referrals. The city of Lakewood is also funding us, and they refer people from the city of Lakewood. In the city of Seattle, it's a combination. If it's a church-sponsored village, the church often has so many beds, right? Like, the church will refer people from, obviously because the ministers are always counseling people and they reach out to a homeless population. So we set aside beds for the church. And then the city has the outreach, their own outreach, which is called the HOPE team. And now it's been called the Unified Care Team, UCT, right? And so we take a lot of referrals from the city's outreach workers. Now, I want to say that the tiny house villagers are not all the same. The one in Whittier Heights is for women only. And then the one that's called TC Spirit Village is focused on BIPOC population. So that one is focused on the Native American, African American, and Alaskan Natives, because they've been, people of color have been overrepresented among the homeless population. So that one is, focused on people of color. And then other villages have families with children. The South End village has immigrant refugees. And the one we just opened, you'll see Henderson Village. We've set aside 10 of those units. You've all read about the Riverton Park situation of asylum seekers. So we've set aside 10 of those units for families with children from the Congo, Angola, and South America. So we are, and then Riverton Village is mostly immigrants and asylum seekers. So because of the crisis right now with asylum seekers, we're proposing to do additional villages, but we're having to advocate for that. I mean, you heard about the 500, asylum seekers that are sleeping outside the church.
Here's a question right here.
Do you have an overarching funding source, or is it truly just for each individual village?
Both Sound Foundations Northwest, which is our organization, and Lehigh, which is Sharon's organization, we are both 501c3 privately nonprofit. And we both receive money not only privately, but we also receive grant money. And we receive money from the city, the county, the state, soon to be, for us at least, federal money. I know Sharon, they get HUD money. So it basically all goes in one pot, and then we go shopping at Lowe's. And I tell everybody, the only thing better than shopping at Lowe's is shopping at Lowe's with Sound Foundations Northwest money. A lot of fun. Yes. You need a microphone. Okay, I'll get you next. Okay, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Why just Lowe's?
Oh,
Are
let
they
me tell you
involved?
about Lowe's. Okay, so we used to use that orange store, and had a lot of problems with delivery. Like they would just dump it on the ground. Lowe's comes in, they bring it in and places and put it in the right places. They give us deep discounts. To date, we have spent $1.9 million for tiny homes, and about 1.85 of that $1 million has gone to Lowe's. So they like us, so they give us deep discounts. So basically, for us, for every 11 homes that we buy, we get 2 for free. That's about what it works. We have a program. Our entire assembly program here is on a zip file, and any municipality or nonprofit that wants it can have it. So we're now in 28 cities around the United States. So we believe in ending homelessness here, of course, but no sense reinventing the wheel. So Lowe's Corporate has come to us, and they said for any city that wants to do it, it takes about $60,000 to set up a Hope Factory. And Lowe's Corporate has said any city that wants it, we will fund that for $60,000, and we will set up a Hope Factory. That's why we shop at Lowe's. And if you think about it, they donate $60,000 and they get how many millions back? Yeah. And so their definition of $60,000 is half of a 30-second TV spot. Okay, so good for everybody. So that's why we shop at Lowe's. Plus they're nice. Yes, back here.
How do the children get to school, and to what schools do they go?
Well, our case managers will enroll children in schools, and because there's the federal McKinney Act, the McKinney Act says that any homeless child can be provided transportation to the school that they were originally or would like to go to, right? So if someone is homeless on the streets in Ballard and they end up in True Hope Village in the central area, then the school will pay for their transportation back to the Ballard school. Yeah, so we coordinate with the McKinney-Vento staff that are in the school system. And then we also have lots of children, as you know, that may have some learning disabilities or who are, developmentally challenged. And then we try and hook them up with special educational resources.
Okay, question over here.
Yeah. Tiny homes are supposed to be temporary. What's the experience of people in tiny homes moving to permanent housing in Seattle?
Well, prior to the pandemic, in Seattle, we had over 50% of the people leaving a tiny house would move into permanent housing. Not included in that count of the 50% would be people moving into transitional housing, people moving into, let's say, assisted living, or reuniting with family or friends. But the 50% was a really good percentage, because if you look at traditional shelters, maybe only 12% would move into permanent housing. Now, during the pandemic, if you remember, the word was to stay put, right? Like during the pandemic, people were not supposed to be like moving around because of COVID. So the numbers obviously went down because we told everybody to stay in place. And then now that we're post-pandemic, we're hovering around 40-some%. We're trying to get back up to the 50%. But good question. Most people are staying less than 6 months. The goal is for people to see it as a short-term stay. And so families with children we tend to try and move them out quicker. So maybe they'll only stay like maybe 4 to 6 weeks or 8 weeks, right? And then we do have people, if it takes longer for them to get their IDs together, Social Security, or get benefits or income support for them, then they may stay longer.
Sharon's being modest. There are people, cities that come and visit us, and specifically Sharon, because they want to see how we're doing it, because we're so successful.
Well, I'll give you an example. We had a severely mentally ill person who lived in a village for a really long time. And we found out that his wife was in New York City. And we actually reunited him with his wife by taking our case manager and him on a plane together to reunite them. So we feel comfortable, coming up with bus fare, train fare, airfare, provided where they land, they're going to have a place, they're going to have a home. So we are not saying, oh, you have to, why would you want to stay homeless in Seattle, right? So we want to reunite people with their, friends and family.
Okay, we're going to go here first and then come over here. Go ahead.
What are the toilet facilities like?
Toilet facilities. So the toilet facilities are handicap accessible. They're in a trailer, and so there's like 3 bathrooms, complete bathroom components, and they're handicap accessible. And then usually what we do is we hook up the washer and dryer in the back, and then we hook up the kitchen, because we're trying to make use of the one, water line, sewer line. I don't know. You'll see. Did we show any pictures of the bathrooms? It looks like
there's not a close up. The Puyallup Village, you can see it, but when we get to it, I'll point it out. Question back here.
Yeah, I'm short, so I'm standing up. Sharon, our church participates in Epiphany Church, has a team that comes, and Jenny Cummings has organized it. And but we also have another team of volunteers that works with the YWCA in refreshing apartments that are transitional housing, but the families move on, and then we refresh those apartments. Do you have a volunteer team, or do you do this professionally? Because obviously if your goal is to get people squared away and then moved on, you expect that the little house would then go on to a new family or a new individual. So how do you manage that refreshing process?
Yeah, so for instance, we've partnered with church groups that want to do welcome baskets. We've also partnered with organizations that want to help furnish, like set up the furnishings in a tiny house or in a village. Absolutely. In some cases, we have individuals that want to donate the furnishings for a tiny house. If you will
We
see,
just had a church that donated 31 quilts, and they were gorgeous.
yes, and we actually have some of the tiny houses you'll see have plaques on them, and we some of them are, some families are buying them as a like a wedding gift or a birthday gift, like in honor of somebody, and so there will be a plaque that you know, like one we had some parents that wanted to honor one of the school teachers, so they purchased the tiny house for us and put a plaque in honor of their, you know, elementary school teacher, things like that.
And we have had 4 memorial services at the Hope Factory. And on a typical build day, in the morning we build all the walls and the platform. In the afternoon we do a tilt-up, which is like an old-fashioned barn raising. And then once we do that, we write love notes. You'll see pictures in here where we write love notes in here, and we name the home and everything. The last one, I got to tell you this is a great story. One of our volunteers' husband died suddenly and young and left her with a 3-month-old baby. And so he absolutely hated Valentine's Day. He would not buy his wife flowers or candy or anything. So when they found out that Valentine's Day was open, they did his Memorial Day service on Valentine's Day. And they wrote Happy Valentine's Day, Cliff, all over on the inside of the home. And it was a day that we had as many tears as laughter. And there's a lot, you all that have been here nod your head, right? There's a lot of emotions that happen in the Hope Factory, right? Okay, I'm lost. Where are we? Here? Yes.
Do I remember that you said, somebody said that there was a 3-year plan, exciting 3-year plan? I was wondering if we get to hear about it.
Yes, it's been floated to the mayor. The mayor saw it, and I don't even know if you know this yet. What he told me was, this is exactly what we need. Let's do it. How about that, huh? So what we're waiting for is we first of all have to know how many of our homeless neighbors are on the streets before we do anything. And so that's called the point in time count, which happened in January. The numbers will come out in March. So once the numbers come out, we will redo our plan, which, by the way, is on our website. You can look at it. But it's 3 years or less, and for less than the cost of sweeps. And what I told Mayor Harold was, you can have, most of our homeless neighbors will be off the streets by the time you run for re-election. And his eyes got this big. That was a fun meeting. So we're working on it. So homelessness is solvable. Yes.
So I'm going to pause this for a minute and ask Terry to come up. And Terry's going to explain how people from Horizon House have gotten involved and what they do. So I asked her, because if it was because of Terry that people had a lot of questions here at Horizon House about tiny houses, that we've had you excellent people come to share with us. So can you explain? I can stand up. Thank you, Terry.
No, really
First
stand
got
up, Terry.
involved with tiny houses through Epiphany Church, and I decided that it was something that people, can you hear? Something that people at Horizon House would enjoy. I guess the best thing I can say is it is fun to go build houses. You are paired with a team member. You work on a gig, is that jig? Jig, where you, at one point it showed a book. You open the book and it tells you exactly what the steps are to build the house. You pick up the lumber, put it in, and you don't ever have to hammer. You use a nail gun. It's heavy, but it's doable. I can use it, and you just pull a trigger and the nail shoots through. But every volunteer, there's one team member who knows what he's doing. He or she is doing, with 2 to 3 volunteers, and I absolutely knew nothing about building, and it is absolutely easy and fun. And the people at Horizon House, Jerry Haas, Mary Mullen, Adele Reynolds, there's Mary. Why don't y'all stand up? Adele Reynolds. Bill Spraker, Jim Spraker. And there's several people who have signed up and have not yet been. But we go on the third Thursday. We leave leave Horizon House at 8:30 in the morning and come back around 2:30 or 3. You take a sack lunch, eat lunch together. And I wanted to I don't know whether you can see the place where you place the lumber. You can't make a mistake. Both because the instructions are so good and because the supervision is so good. And so it's just wonderful. And I urge anybody who wants to go to call me. We've got 8 people signed up, but most days we have 4 or maybe 5, and we can use more people. So if you're interested, let me know, and you can go with us. If you don't like it, you don't have to stay. And we carpool to the factory is just south of. It's not the Kingdom now, it's the whatever it is, but it's down in that Lumenfield. It's just beyond that. And
there's the jigs right there.
Huh?
There's the jigs right there. There you go.
Oh.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. So the other thing I thought was interesting.
These are instructions.
Yes. 5th grade level.
So you were saying that your sign-ups for people to come work is full. So
Well, relatively. We have groups that come. We have a number of different types of people. We have groups like Horizon that comes every 3rd Thursday or whatever, and we have other groups that come, and then we have people that sign up individually. So between the groups and the individuals, we have about 20 to 25 people every day that sign up, that volunteer with us. So you can come individually. If you got a car and Thursdays doesn't work and you want to work on a Saturday or whatever, I'll have business cards that's got our website. You go on the website where it says to volunteer, and it will explain how to do all that fun stuff.
So thank you so much for coming, the two of you. And
thank you.
After a day of work and then coming and sharing with us too, it's really wonderful. And they were sharing that this is the first city that had the tiny homes. And you heard that they said they sent out their plans and so on to other places, but they were naming places all over the country that have used them as resources so they don't have to reinvent the wheel. So I think we could be pretty proud of all the things that get started in Seattle, that this is a wonderful project. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sharon.
Thank you, everybody.